And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, my beautiful co-host, Laraib, as we are here to break down week 7 of the NFL season, Laraib. Awesome NFL football. A lot of unpredictable results so far. So going into this week, I will say last week was definitely the most chalk week of the season. A lot of favorites ended up winning. And this is, early on in the season, we really don't know what teams are made of. But now we're kind of hitting this mid-season stretch where teams are starting to form an identity. You're starting to see what teams are pulling away from the pack and which teams are looking at the roster and saying, maybe not this season. So it's very interesting to see you're getting a better grasp with teams, which should lead to us having better picks and results. But you never know. We've seen a five game picking, whatever. We've scored 5 in a week late in the season before. So if you know how our point system works, that's not very good. But a lot of games, a lot of awesome games to get into. This is a really good slate, especially compared to last week. A lot of big teams facing off against each other, Larav. So are you excited to get into this week?
I'm most definitely excited. Before we start, we do have two teams on bye, the Bears and the Cowboys. Cowboys really need to work some
Need
stuff
it
out. And the Bears, a
in
huge win for them
Chicago.
overseas. Yeah, they're having that bye week in Chicago. Yeah, huge win for them last week overseas, and now they get to rest up. And then, a couple of big divisional games for everyone else in their division, and so we'll see how that goes. But without further ado, let's get into week 7. We have my Seattle Seahawks after their mini bye traveling to Atlanta. Atlanta favored by 3 points, and it's just been the Seahawks defense. I had just huge expectations for that defense, really, right? You bring in Mike McDonald and you think, he's going to turn things around, kind of like the performance that he had with the Ravens last year. But that just has not been the case. And now you can blame it on injuries. Rick Woolen doesn't play last week. Byron Murphy hasn't played the last 2 weeks. And it's just, right, you can say, injuries. But every team in the NFL deals with injuries. And it's not something that, teams just say, oh, well, we had injuries. We were just going to let up and let teams run all over us, throw all over us. But that's just been the case for the Seahawks team. They've just been disappointing across the board. Now you travel to Atlanta and Kirk Cousins, this offense, as much as I was down on them to start the season, every single week, it looks like they're building and building and building. That Thursday night game against the Bucks where Kirk Cousins throws for 500. And then last week against the Panthers, Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson just ran all over them. And so it really looks like this Falcons team is starting to put together an offense. And as a Seahawks fan, I can only feel scared facing Kirk Cousins in Atlanta.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. This Atlanta team has really gotten better week by week by week as Kirk Cousins develops chemistry with a lot of these offensive pieces and they start to formulate an identity on offense. And that really does start with the rushing game, Laura. As you mentioned, Tyler Algier, Bijan have really started to heat up, especially last week against the Panthers. But, it's the Panthers, but not facing that much different of a defense, unfortunately, for Seahawks fans. Seahawks give up almost 200 rushing yards to the 49ers last week without Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason basically being out for the entire second half. So you're going into this game with a really tough challenge in your hand. You have some guys questionable, Byron Murphy, Tariq Woolen, who can potentially come back to help this defense. But I just don't think it's going to be enough in Atlanta. I do think Seattle is going to have some success in the passing game. But just the mistakes I saw from Geno last week, and this is a hyper-aggressive Atlanta defense that forces you into some bad mistakes. And if they aren't able to run the ball against this Atlanta front, I just don't like their chances in a shootout against this well-balanced Atlanta team. So I'm going to go with the Falcons in this one, 36 to Seattle 30.
I'm gonna go a little bit lower scoring than you. Yeah, what I've seen from Geno Smith the last 2 weeks just has not impressed me, and that's not entirely his fault, right? You get
No.
away from the run early against the Giants, and then last week Kenneth Walker's getting stuffed in the backfield, and your offensive line is just letting guys just blow right past him, and so it's just gonna be on Geno. Does he want to take those big hits at this point in his career and really try to force the ball? It's also been some bad penalties that called back huge plays. But I still think this Falcons team, Drake London's been going bananas the last 2 weeks. Kyle Pitts has gotten involved, and then just those running backs. I think they're just going to tear us up on offense. Give me the Eagles 30-24.
The Falcons, yeah.
Give me the Falcons 30-24.
All right, Laura. Next game on the slate at noon on Sunday, we have the Houston Texans traveling to Green Bay to face the Packers. A really, really exciting matchup. Two surprise teams from last season who made big splashes in the postseason face off here in Green Bay. Packers favored by 2.5 points at home. Obviously, still no Nico Collins for this Texans offense, but with Joe Mixon coming back last week, you saw against that Patriots team, they rushed for over 100 yards. And this is just when CJ Stroud is at his best, when he's dealing, finding a bunch of different guys, getting guys like Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs more involved. Joe Mixon really unlocks a lot for this offense and what they're able to do. And against this Packers defense, which is very opportunistic, they've forced a turnover every single game this season so far. But if there's anything about CJ Stroud, he is a guy who protects the ball very well, makes the right read. And if they're able to run the ball in this Packers defense, which is susceptible to being run on, as we've seen so far this season, then I think this Texans offense will have a lot of success. Now, turning it over to the other side of the ball, this Texans pass rush needs to be able to get home against Jordan Love because he has been dealing since he's come back. Obviously, he had a very, strange pick six against the Rams, but overall, he's been playing very solid football since he's returned. So I think this is going to be a very exciting game from both quarterbacks. I just don't know exactly what I'm going to be getting from this Green Bay receiving core. Christian Watson came back last week, had a really good game, but he's kind of up in the air. Romeo Doubs also, we thought he might get suspended. He ended up playing. He had 2 touchdowns. So against guys like Derek Stingley in this Houston secondary, I just have more faith in CJ Stroud and that passing game, even in Green Bay. So I'm leaning Texans in this one, Laraib.
Before I start breaking down this game, I just want to say, why is this game not, Sunday Night Football? Why is this game not Monday Night Football?
Well, Aaron
Instead,
Rodgers.
we have fucking Aaron Rodgers, not just regular Aaron Rodgers, fucking Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson on Sunday Night Football. And instead, we could have had Jordan Love and CJ Stroud, 2 teams from last year who really surprised us, going even into a deep playoff run. But no, we have Aaron Rodgers and the Jets facing the Steelers on Sunday Night Football instead of these 2 teams matching up. I just wanted to say that real quick.
Yeah, you said.
But now breaking into this game, I'm really leaning Packers in this one, Lewis. I have an inkling that you might lean Texans, but it's going to be Jair Alexander on Stephon Diggs, and I think Jair is going to lock him up like he's been locking it up the past couple
He
matchups
is
that
playing
they've
in
had.
this game.
I do believe so that he will be playing.
Okay.
And also for this Texans team, back-to-back road games. They're traveling to the East Coast. Now they're traveling up to Green Bay. You know how they play in Green Bay, Lewis. And then for this Packers team,
Not Chicago.
I really like how their wide receiver core has been playing. You can tell me Christian Watson's up and down and Romeo Doubs was suspended for 1 game, but still you saw them last week just torching that Cardinals secondary. And we saw Drake May really carve up that Texans secondary last week. Now you can say they were in obvious passing situations and, being able to air it down that field may not have been the greatest thing ever against that team, but still we saw Drake May have some success, and I really think that Green Bay is going to have a good time against this Texas team at home. Josh Jacobs, maybe not the flashiest season from him so far, but he's been very reliable for them, 15 plus carries in all of his games. And he's that ground and pound guy who's going to be able to get that huge pickup for you. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to these 2 quarterbacks. Who do you trust more in this spot? With all his guys out there, I really like Jordan Love at home.
Okay.
I think missing Nico Collins is just going to be a huge negative for this Texans offense. I like the Packers 33-30.
I think the biggest thing in this game that I think is going to swing it will be turnovers. And I trust this Houston defensive line to get pressure on Jordan Love, to force him into some mistakes, which he is prone to making. 6 interceptions in only 4 games so far this season for Jordan Love. That I think, CJ Stroud, on the other hand, offensive line also pretty shaky, but this defensive line for the Packers hasn't been getting a ton of pressure this season. It's really just been fortune for the secondaries and some of the teams they played so far, not very prolific passing offenses. So I think CJ Stroud really puts this defense to the test. And I think even on the road, the Texans find a way to get it done. A late Jaime Fairbairn field goal puts them over the top, and they ice the game on defense as the Texans win this game 31 to Packers 28.
Well, Lewis, that is going to be a great game between young 2 quarterbacks. But another huge divisional game of the Detroit Lions traveling to Minnesota. We know how it likes to get cold up there in that Iron Dome. The Vikings favored by 2 at home coming off a bye, Lewis. And I really, really like the Lions in this spot. Even with the loss of Aiden Hutchinson, this Lions offense has immensely picked it up. They've had the yardage all season long, but they weren't really converting those into points, right? Going into Arizona, putting up 400 yards of offense, only scoring 20 points. We saw them on Monday Night Football against the Seahawks, and then last week against the Cowboys. This team is electric on the offensive side of the ball, and that defense is also opportunistic. When you have guys like Brian Branch picking off Dak Prescott, you have the rookie and Terrion Arnold making plays. I really believe they're going to outclass this Vikings team, especially with Sam Darnold and the way he looked in that London game, and with Aaron Jones not being 100%. They bring in Cam Akers, and so that kind of gives me a feel that Aaron Jones may not be at 100%, and so I really like the Lions in this spot.
Laraib, I don't think I could disagree with you more in
Mm,
this spot here.
yes, yes,
I think
yes.
Detroit is a little high on its own supply, even though they had just lost their biggest defensive player, probably, the leader in defensive player of the year for the season, to Aiden Hutchinson. Unfortunately for him, obviously prayers up. Hopefully he has a speedy recovery after that scary injury. But he's definitely going to be out for the season and absolutely going to be out for this game. And I just think it's a huge swing factor for the Vikings coming off a bye. Lions went on the road, had this huge win. Now have to go back on the road to play the Vikings. And a big thing for me in this game is just the utter mismatch between these Vikings receivers and these Lions D backs. If the Lions aren't able to get pressure, and it's going to be hard without a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, then Sam Darnold, with another week, of a bye week, coming back from London, had probably his worst game against the Jets. Now plays against this Lions defense, which is very gettable. And guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison on the outside are going to put these young Detroit corners to the test, as I think it'll be a test they are not prepared for. So I think it's going to be a lot of scoring. And you mentioned there's definitely questions about this Vikings rushing game. But a big thing that really propelled me to want to pick the Vikings in this game is how formidable this Brian Flores Vikings defense truly is. And yes, you say the Lions have started to find an identity, but a lot of that identity has come from being able to run the ball. And if they're not able to run the ball against this Brian Flores defense, which is third in the league in rush yards per game allowed, then it's going to be a lot of pressure on Jared Goff, a lot of blitzes. And he's not a guy who does well under pressure. Just, can't really get out of the pocket, isn't very mobile. And Brian Flores does a great job of disguising coverages, making you think twice before you pass the ball. So I just think this is a very friendly matchup. And if you think these two teams are, vying for the top of the division, I think I just lean the team who's coming off a bye and playing at home. So I am going with the Vikings in this one in a shockingly low scoring game. Just going from that high of highs in Dallas, a game the Lions really wanted to win. Now in a spot here, going on the road again. I like the Vikings in this matchup. I'm going to go Vikings 23 to Lions 17.
And I think the Lions are in a great spot here where they faced an offense very similar to the offense they faced last week. A huge wide receiver one with a solid quarterback and not much of a rushing attack. And that's what I think the Vikings are this far into the season. And so I think the Lions can recreate some of the success from last week, really put some pressure on Sam Darnold. It might be 11:59 over there in Minnesota, and Sam Darnold turns back into the pumpkin. And the Lions, Jared Goff is a veteran quarterback, Lewis. You can blitz him all you want. I think big game for Sam Laporta here, big game for Amon-Ra in those short and intermediate routes as they dink and dunk their way down the field. Give me the Lions 30-24.
We still have 2 weeks until Halloween, so it is not quite pumpkin time for Sam Darnold yet. But let's go ahead, Laurel. Let's move on to the Fox game of the week, and it is certainly living up to that with these two Super Bowl rematch heavyweights. The San Francisco 49ers traveling to or hosting Kansas City. San Francisco favored by 1.5 points. San Francisco coming off a mini bye after beating the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football. Chiefs coming off a legitimate bye after playing Monday Night Football against the Saints. And the big thing for me is this Kansas City defense against this 49ers rushing attack. And with obviously no McCaffrey in this game, Jordan Mason recovering from a shoulder injury, it's still questionable whether or not he's going to be able to go. And yes, you still like what you saw from guys like Isaac Guerrero and some other running backs in that spot because it's just such a good running scheme. But against this Kansas City defense, which has just been the best rush defense basically since the midpoint of last season when they really found their groove defensively, it's just going to be a really tough time for Brock Purdy in this offense to really get, up off the ground in this matchup. And as for the Chiefs offense, a big thing for me that I want to see is how these tackles are going to face off against the defensive pressure from the 49ers. And I think they're going to do just enough. I really liked what I saw from Kareem Hunt rushing the ball and getting guys like Juju Smith-Schuster a lot more involved in the passing game. Obviously, no Rashee Rice really hurts, but Travis Kelce coming off his best game of the season. This feels very similar to the last time these two teams faced off in the regular season, in which the Chiefs just went crazy offensively against this very similar scheme of defense. So I do favor the Chiefs in this matchup. I just think it's be a lower scoring game than a lot of people expect, given the caliber of these two teams. Close game for sure, but I just trust the Chiefs in a spot like this.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. We think back to our Super Bowl where I was forced to, gun to my head, to pick the 49ers, and that is not going to be the case in this one. The Mahomie, undefeated after a bye. Him and Andy Reid definitely got something cooked up for this game. I know the 49ers are going to be playing their asses off, especially after that Super Bowl loss. But I just feel like, we've talked about it throughout the season so far, Lewis. This 49ers defense has just not been what they were last year or the last couple of years. It's one thing that you're forcing pressure against Forsyth on Thursday Night Football against that turnstile, and then you're facing this Chiefs offensive line with some of the best offensive line players in the country. You got Creed Humphrey at the center position, Orlando Brown. He's all right, I guess, but they have a solid offensive line, and I think Mahomes is going to control this game through and through. It's not going to be close, in my opinion. A late touchdown from the 49ers makes it a one-possession game, but I think just Mahomie, he's going to tear it up. Juju Smith-Schuster, someone he's had chemistry with, who looked very good on that Monday night game. I think they're just going to have an awesome game plan for this one. I like the Chiefs 27-20.
I'm going a little bit lower scoring in this game. I just think it's going to be a constant, just stiff arm in terms of the scoreboard. Chiefs are going to get out early, force the 49ers in some untimely passing positions. And I do agree with you. A late touchdown by the 49ers makes it seem a lot closer than it is. But I'm going Chiefs 23 to 49ers 20 in this ball game. But let's go ahead, Laraib, and let's move on to a game you alluded to earlier with some enthusiasm in your voice, I should say. We have Sunday Night Football, the New York Jets, the new New York Jets with recently acquired Davante Adams, traveling to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers, who also have a brand new toy and new quarterback Russell Wilson making his Steelers debut in this ball game. And when we were talking about this, I kind of brought up this game when we were talking about the Jets in our last episode, and I said, "Oh, the big thing for me is this Jets run defense, which has really been, gotten a lot in this season so far. But without Justin Fields to really add that extra element of rushing, I'm not too threatened by a Najee Harris, no Cortland Patterson or no Cordero Patterson, and likely no Jalen Warren in this game. So a lot of Najee Harris just kind of doing it by himself. And Russell Wilson, I don't know yet of what I'm going to see from him. Meanwhile, I did see some things from this Jets offense that I did like in Monday Night Football. And I know you're going on the road short week to play at Pittsburgh. It's definitely not an easy game, but there are just things I trust about this offense more. And getting a guy like Davante Adams, who you don't have to worry about chemistry issues, you don't have to worry about the fit immediately. These two guys have that immediate connection. You know that they've been texting on the side. Definitely some illegal tampering that we won't talk about right now. But I just thought Aaron Rodgers was in a groove. And then against this Steelers defense, which is extremely formidable, and I am worried on the edges, especially TJ Watt against Morgan Moses. That just sounds, we're getting Halloween early with that scary matchup right there. But I liked what I saw in the quick passing game. And the Steelers really haven't been that great defending the middle of the field, which I think the Jets will be able to use a lot. Look for Tyler Conklin. That was a surprising game in this one. But I am leaning Jets in this matchup.
Yeah, and it almost feels like a must-win spot for the Jets. You think about all the noise that they've had, and then they make this big splash to bring in Davante Adams. If you lose this game against Russell Wilson in his first start as a Steeler, that's just going to be embarrassing as all hell.
Season's
and it's
over.
just going to turn everything on its head if it hasn't already been turned. And so I think this is a big spot for the Jets. For the Steelers, yeah, like you mentioned, it doesn't really make any sense. Justin Fields is coming. He's done a great job. 10 total touchdowns on the year. His legs have been a huge X factor for the Steelers team, with that rushing attack behind Najee Harris. And now, we're going to throw out Russell Wilson out there against this Jets defense, which has been solid in its own right. Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed are going to have some good matchups, especially, when you think about just George Pickens, someone who doesn't put in a lot of effort when he knows he's not getting the ball, and then just a bunch of bums besides that. And so I think this is going to be a huge spot for the Jets. I like Aaron Rodgers to dump the ball very quickly, very often to Garrett Wilson, because we know Devontae Adams is dealing with that hamstring. And so let's go Garrett Wilson. But I like the Jets in this one in a must-win spot. Give me the Jets 24-17.
Let me just say, I think that hamstring got a lot healthier at 2 p.m. or at 9 a.m. yesterday. So I think we're fine in that regard. But I agree with you. I do like the Jets in this matchup. I just think this is a must-win scenario for them. And if they can't get this, their season is pretty much over. And this is also a huge game in just the wild card standings for the AFC. Because if you get this win here, the Steelers, are still in that mix, even though they're technically tied for the division lead. I just think the Ravens are just head and shoulders above them at this point. So very, very interesting matchup. Worthy of Sunday Night Football, I would say, if you ask me. Getting to see Devontae Adams with the Jets is definitely going to be fun, seeing those two link up once again. But I agree. I have the Jets in this one, 23. Greg Zuerlein redeems himself in this game, and the Steelers score 17 points. But let's go ahead, Laurel. Let's go to Monday Night Football. We have a doubleheader. Yes. The only game that matters on Monday. The Ravens going to Tampa to face the Bucks. Tampa coming off a dominating performance on the road against New Orleans. Baltimore favored by 3.5 points, however, going to Tampa. And this is a spot for Tampa where I really thought they unlocked a lot with their offense last week. Bucky Irving is just the most talented running back on this roster. I know how great Sean Tucker, the third string guy, looked. Rachaad White was not really a running back. And the success they had running the ball really unlocked a ton for this offense. But the biggest mismatch for me in this entire game is these Ravens corners facing off against these Tampa wide receivers. These Ravens corners have really had struggle against the elite level receivers this season. As I mentioned in our last episode, guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins brutalized them. And then, CeeDee Lamb had a really big game. Devontae Adams had a really big game against them in week 2. So it's a huge test going now from Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin had an awesome game last week. And Mike Evans, he doesn't have to go up against Marshawn Lattimore this week. He's going up against the rookie Nate Wiggins on the outside or a, old banged up Marlon Humphrey. So definitely a lot of mismatches on the outside that I think Tampa will be able to take advantage of in this matchup. And it'll complement it by having a dominant run game that they rely on. And if Baker just plays mistake-free football at home, hell, he could throw 3 interceptions. They could still score 51 points if they want to. I'm still a little shaken, if you can't tell. And back home, a lot of emotion in this game, an area hit by a hurricane. It's going to be a packed house and to support for the recent hurricane victims and stuff. I just think the emotional edge here leans Tampa, and their offense going to have some serious wins in that department.
I think we are in for a huge offensive explosion by both teams in this game. But for me, it really comes down to, two defenses who haven't been playing very well, and the two offenses who have been lighting it up. And if you're asking me, who do I trust more, Baker Mayfield and Bucky Irving, or Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry? I'm going with a 2-time MVP and
only was a 2v2.
Yeah, 2-time MVP and All-Pro Derrick Henry. And those two, Lewis, have really lived up to the hype this season. No question about it. 0-2 start for them, but they have been grounding and pounding that ball all year long. Zay Flowers exploding in his last 2 games. 0 targets in the second half of that game, by the way, but that's neither here nor there.
They were winning.
He's been going off. 9 catches, over 100 yards last week. I think he can continue that. And for this Bucks team, I think you hit the nail on the head. That offense where you have Baker Mayfield throwing 3 picks, that will, you can still win that game against the New Orleans Saints. You're not playing against the New Orleans Saints this week. You're playing against Lamar Jackson, Action Jackson. He's going to make you pay on those turnovers. I think this is going to be a great game, but and when it comes down to the end of it, I think Justin Tucker makes a huge field goal after missing a couple big ones this year to put the Ravens to 5-2. Give me the Ravens 33-30.
Yeah, and I have a very similar score, Laraib. I have the Buccaneers 35 to Baltimore 30 in this awesome, awesome game on Monday Night Football. The only game I'll be watching on Monday night. But let's go ahead quickly and go through the rest of the slate. Those are our highlighted games. We still have a lot of football to get into, Laraib. So let's start in London town as the Jaguars remain in London after a disappointing performance against the Bears last week. And the Patriots make the trip now with new quarterback Drake May. Jaguars favored by 5.5. How do you lean in this one?
I'm leaning Pats. I mean, call me crazy, but this Jaguars team is just finished, to be quite frank. We saw them last week, bad drops, 4 drop touchdown passes, huge fumbles, bad throws by Trevor Lawrence. This team has just given up playing football. You could tell me they could have been in London all season long, the way they've been playing. And I would still, I still like the Pats. Drake May really showed me something in that game against the Texans. I think they find a way to win this one. Give me the Patriots 20-17.
Yeah, I disagree with you. Simply the fact that, your second start as a quarterback going to London is no easy feat. And then, I mean, you're playing a Jacksonville defense where you'll have a lot of opportunities, but a super team in the Jaguars in the spot, you really can't lose. And if you lose this game, whole house is getting burned down. I don't think that's going to happen this week. I don't know what Vegas is on with that 5.5 point spread, though. And this is definitely the most nervous I am about picking a game, not because of the Patriots, definitely because of the Jaguars, but I'm going with the Jags reluctantly, simply because, got to play the numbers. I'm going Jaguars 23 to Patriots 17. Next game up, Rob, we have the Tennessee Titans traveling to Buffalo to face the Bills. Bills favored by 9 points at home. How do you lean?
Of course, I'm going Buffalo. This is just going to be a classic Buffalo Bills game. They had a Monday night slugfest, but this is one where you just imagine Josh Allen throwing the ball all over this Titans team, just like Joe Flacco did last week, and they get a huge win. I like the Bills 33-20.
Yeah, this Titans defense is definitely leaving a lot to be desired, especially how they started the season versus how they've been playing. And, Josh Allen gets his brand new toy in Amari Cooper. And I think this offense, they're going to be able to run the ball pretty effectively. Even if James Cook doesn't play in this game, Ray Davis had a very impressive night against the Jets. So give me the Bills 31 to Titans 17. Next game up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to Cleveland to face the Browns. Cincy favored by 6 points on the road. Historically, a pretty tough spot for the Bengals. They've struggled against Cleveland, but this Cleveland team is just so maligned. It's just so hard for me in good conscience to pick them, especially because they burned me 2 weeks ago when I picked them to beat the stupid Commanders. And I can't, in good faith, pick against them again or pick the. And so I'm going to go with the Bengals. I'm going to go Bengals 33 to Cleveland 13.
Joe Burrow has never, ever in his career won a game in Cleveland. And I think that's going to change this year because this Browns team is god awful. They're trading away their best offensive, the second best offensive piece behind Nick Chubb. And it really looks like, they're just headed in the opposite direction of what they thought they were going to be this year. Give me the Bengals 27-17.
All right. Next noon slot, we have the Miami Dolphins traveling to Indy to face the Colts. Still no Tua in this game, coming off a bye. Dolphins are 3-point underdogs. Give me the Colts in this one. I think, with or without Joe Flacco, even though, I just think this Miami team had a lot bigger issues than we were even privy to before Tua got hurt. This defense is just god awful. I think Jonathan Taylor coming back for this game, I think the Colts are going to be able to run the ball very effectively, and I just can't trust this Dolphins offense even with a week of bye. And Mike McDaniel's seat is getting hot in the South Beach.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. You could give Tyler Huntley the whole offseason to prepare for this game. He still would not look like a comparable quarterback. I think the Colts, with Anthony Richardson back, he's going to be huge in the run game, along with Jonathan Taylor and Trey Sermon. I think they just run all over this Dolphins team, who's been bottom 5 in just everything across the board this year. I think, they lose Jalen Phillips, and their just defense has not been there. Bradley Chubb missed missed most of the season so far. I think the Colts get this one done 23-17.
All right, Laura, next game, we have a divisional matchup. The Philadelphia Eagles traveling to New York to face the Giants. Eagles 3-point favorites on the road. I like the Giants in this one, Laraib. I'm not going to sugarcoat. This Eagles team has just been abysmal compared to some of our expectations this season. In that ugly game they had against Cleveland, Nick Sirianni shaving his head and barking at his own fans. Now going into the Giants team, which their defense has played outstanding so far this season. This defensive line. This is what a lot of people were talking about. Like, hey, the Giants have a lot going for them, but this defensive line is very scary. And even a guy like Azeez Ojulari, who's just a backup, extra rush end. He got 2 sacks last week against the Bengals. They have a lot of depth there. And I think against this Philadelphia team where Jalen Hurts has just looked all out of whack, I like the Giants in this one. Do you know Malik Neighbors' status for this game?
I
was
believe
trying
he's
to find it.
playing. I believe he's
He is
almost out of
playing.
concussion protocol. I think he's good. To
Yeah, so
start.
that reinforces my belief here. I think Daniel Jones has sneakily been playing pretty well this season. It's just, at least I think Brian Daboll has been calling a good offensive game, and Tyrone Tracy starting to emerge in that Giants backfield, give them some extra juice to winning this game. Low scoring affair. I'm going Giants 16 to Eagles 10.
And I mean, the biggest piece that you missed in all of this, Lewis, was Saquon Barkley returning to New York, the team he played against or played for so many years, who let him go in the offseason. And you don't think he's going to come into this game and tell me not put up 100 yards and 2 touchdowns? I mean, I just don't see in what world that doesn't happen, Lewis. He's going to come into this game. You could tell me they have the Legion of Boom defense back there playing for the Giants. Saquon Barkley is going to come in this game with a vengeance. They're going to be trying to game plan for him all, for the rest of this week. It's not going to work. And, as bad as the Eagles team has been playing, I still think they generate some pressure on Daniel Jones, force him to throw a couple ducks up into the air for Darius Slay. And this is going to be a 1-possession game for sure. I think the Eagles just do a little bit more and they win 20-17.
And unfortunately, the person making this game plan will involve Nick Sirianni, and that is just not something. A huge coaching mismatch in this game. But let's go ahead, Laraib, and let's move on to our next game. We have if I can pull it up, we have the 3:00 slate where we have the Las Vegas Raiders traveling to the Rams to play the Rams, excuse me. Rams are 6.5-point favorites. That just changed. They were 7-point favorites right before we started this episode. So something is changing. And as much as I want to lean Vegas, this line just scares me enough. Cooper Kupp is coming back from injury, so a huge boost to this Rams offense coming off a bye. Sean McVay with time to prepare against this Raiders team that is just reeling right now. They trade away Devontae Adams, which overall good move, but just a team that, Aiden O'Connell starting at quarterback, just the inconsistency in the offense. I just really like this spot for the Rams to get some momentum, start to try to pick up some wins and salvage together a decent season. I like the Rams in this spot. I'm going Rams 30 to Raiders 20.
Yeah, no world do I pick Aiden O'Connell to beat Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. Give me the Rams 26-13.
All right, next game up, we have the Carolina Panthers traveling to Washington to face the Commanders. Washington 8-point favorites in this ball game, Laraib. And I've been impressed with how this Commanders defense has been playing the past few weeks. Even though Jonathan Allen out with a pectoral injury, I think the defense has been getting a lot of pressure. I think this young secondary is starting to make some plays. I still don't love them in a spot like this. But then you look at the other side, Jaden Daniels against this Panthers defense. Enough said. I'm going with the Commanders 33 to Carolina 26.
Yeah, it's just Jane Daniels playing lights out this season. He just torches this Panthers secondary. But, don't be surprised if Deontay Johnson starts burning the St. Juice on the outside, similar to what Zay Flowers was doing last week. I still like the Commanders, though, 30-24.
All right, next game, we have the Monday Night Football doubleheader. The other side of the coin. We have exclusively on ESPN Plus for everyone out there with an ESPN Plus subscription that didn't involve them buying a bundle to get Disney Plus and Hulu along with it. We have the Los Angeles Chargers traveling to Arizona to face the Cardinals. Cardinals are 2.5-point underdogs at home. Chargers defense playing exceptionally well, getting guys like Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt back from injury is going to be huge in this game against this Cardinals team. It's Call of Duty season, so Kyler Murray is just not playing well. And it just, you don't know with this Cardinals team. And because of the inconsistency, I can't pick them in this spot. I'm going with the Chargers 26 to Cardinals 20.
Yeah, I mean, we both clearly are just going with a better team here. The Cardinals have looked awful these past couple of games, especially against the Packers. Just penalty after penalty after penalty. Huge fumbles by James Conner and their backup running back. Just a lot of miscommunication on both sides of the ball for them. I think the Chargers are playing awesome football, really controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides, and I think they dominate this one, 27-20.
All right, Rob, well, that's going to do it for the entire Week 7 slate. Some awesome games to look forward to. Before we head out of here, we're going to go ahead and do our locks, upsets, and best bets of the week, Laraib. So I'll start with you. Who is your upset of the week?
That is the New England Patriots, who've lost 5 games in a row. 5 games in a row, traveling to London with the rookie quarterback. But the good thing is they're facing the dreadful Jacksonville Jaguars. I think this is a huge spot for Drake May to put up a lot of points and for that defense to, do something to the best of their capabilities to slow down this dreadful Jaguars offense. But I think the Patriots get the upset this week.
I don't hate that one, Laraib. My upset is Tampa at home playing the Ravens. I just really like what this offense has been able to do. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. And as much as I do respect the Lamar Derrick Henry combo, this is 11v11, not 2v2. So I'm going with the Bucks as my upset.
All right, Lewis, let's get into our locks. Who are you picking as your first lock?
My lock of the week. I get to pick against the Cleveland Browns. Are you kidding me? Especially with the way Joe Burrow and this offense have been playing since T. Higgins has returned. I love the Bengals in this spot. Even though he's never won in Cleveland, I think Joe Burrow gets his get back here against the worst team in the NFL.
And for my lock of the week, I'm going with the 6.5-point favorites at home, Los Angeles Rams. Coming off a bye, I think they're facing a dreadful, god awful Raiders team who don't really have much to say on offense or defense. And with Cooper Kupp back, I think the Rams do all they want against that team.
And that leads me right into my best bet of the week. Cooper Kupp coming back, this offense off a bye. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. I still don't really trust this Rams defense. So I think the Raiders can get some backdoor potential. They have some interesting pieces that may have been unlocked with Devontae Adams departing, Trey Tucker being one of those to pay attention to in this ball game. So over 43.5, give me that as my lock or my best bet of the week.
And for my best bet of the week, I'm going to go with your Tampa Bay Buccaneers and my Baltimore Ravens to score over 49.5. I think that's extremely low for a team that put up 51 last week by themselves and a Ravens team that put up 30. This is going to be an offensive explosion. I'm expecting well over 60 points in this one.
All right, well, Rob, that's going to do it for this week's picks. If you liked what we said and want to see our Week 6 recap, that is still live. Remember, we were filming this on a Wednesday, so these lines are subject to change, but a lot of very exciting football to get into, and we're super excited to break it all down next week in our Week 7 recap. So, Rob, do you want to say anything before we head out of here?
No, I think that's the First to Go podcast signing off.
Peace.